Hello Internet, and today's video is going to be another one of those wonderful list videos where booktubers love to tell you what we've read and like how much we loved it and just amazing stuff, So this all my favorite books of 2018, the ones that I actually liked, that I didn't hate, that I wouldn't mind recommending to other people, that I would actually go out of my way to recommend to other people. So we're going to start at number 10 and work our way up to number 1. So number 10 starts off with The Call by Pedro Ogulin. And I'm about to fucking kill this cat because if she knocks over my camera in another video. Alright, bye. So The Call by Pedro Ogulin was the fae book that I wanted. This was my type of book. This follows a world where the fae were locked away by the Irish, and now they're back with a vengeance. So they've been calling away teenagers and all people in their adolescence, if they're Irish, into the world the fae were exiled to the Greylands, and kind of hunt them down and torture them and just really awful things to all these poor children. And so this book is about said children and their struggle to be trained and to survive their 3 minutes being hunted, to see if they'll come back alive. And some that do come back very changed. So this was a really good book. I liked it. I loved the disability rep. I loved the fae. I loved how menacing it was. I just liked the whole story. I liked the way it was told. Everything about this book was great. The short and sweet of it, if you want a book where faes are like giggling murderers and children are on the run for their lives trying to survive, read this book. It's really good. It also has a sequel. I don't know how good that sequel is, but I like this first book, so there's that. Number 9 is technically 2 books. You're going to see that throughout this list, that some books are kind of a tie-in, but I'm allowing it because it's my list and I can. So number 9 is Daughter of the Pirate King and Daughter of the Siren Queen. You'll see with a lot of my favorite books that they tended to be books that surprised me with how great they were. Like, I was just like, oh wow, you surprised me. Like, The Call surprised me. I didn't even know what that book was about, to be honest, when I picked it up. And then these two surprised me because I don't find a lot of pirate books that I like, even though I like pirates. Like, people just don't write the books I want to read about the subjects that I like. They write their books that they would want to read, which tends not to be what I would prefer when it comes to those subjects. So I have trouble finding the ones that I like. And these were pirate books that I like. So this is the first book and the sequel in the duology. This is about a girl who is human and half siren. And she was raised by her father, the Pirate King, and it is about her being a pirate with her little pirate ship, just doing piratey things. It also has this romance in it that I really like, because it's like that perfect hate to love romance, which I'm just like, I'm here for it. Another thing that I love, but that it's so easy to get wrong in my eyes, and this was just perfect for me because it had sort of like an enemies to lovers, and I was just like here for that perfect level of angst that I needed. And everything about this was just really fun, really joyful. It was pirates. It was like strong characters. We have hate to love romance that doesn't overshadow the fact that this is still a pirate book. It did a good job balancing the two of those. I loved the fact that it had sirens, and I loved how they did the sirens, that it was like the sirens wanted to be fucking sirens. They didn't want to be humans when we do meet the sirens, so I did like that. because I'm fucking tired of all my mermaid stories just being about some sappy Ariel bitch wanting to go and like escape the sea. Like, what's so bad under the sea? Like, Earth life ain't that great either, sister. Go swim with the fishes. Like, because at least you can breathe down there, and it's not like a euphemism for like dying. That's not what I was going for. You can swim with the fishes if you don't want to swim with the fishes. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. Anyway, this was just really fun. I had a really good time. There was only like one or two little things that I would have preferred went a little bit differently. But other than that, I had a lot of fun. So I'm giving it my number 4 spot. And like I said before, I read a lot of books this year, so shout out to you. Number 8 is going to go to another 2 books. Wow, pat myself on the back. Another 2 books. Once again, the first and the second book in a series. This time they're the first and second in a trilogy, of which the third book has yet to come out, but is coming out this year. And this goes to The Bone Witch and the Heart Forger by Ren Shepetcho. This was another book, like, I'm starting to see a pattern now that I'm reading this list and telling you guys. This was yet another book that gave me what I wanted and did it in a way of what I wanted. So this book was basically about necromancers, and did it so well. So this book follows a girl who lives in a world with magic, where magic is common and people have magic, and they're called Asha. A lot of times, now there's a lot of different Asha and like what they can specialize in, but there's one specific type that is sometimes nicknamed the Bone Witch, which has to deal with raising the dead, and she finds out she's a Bone Witch. Now, Bone Witches aren't well loved, even though they are necessary, because their powers revolve around the dead. And throughout the course of the series, we are understanding that she is the villain of this story. Not to say that she is bad, like she's not a bad person, but in the context of the world that she is living in, she became the villain in so many people's eyes. And like you find out there's like, you're gonna find out there's a reason and to why and stuff like that. Like the series isn't over, so I don't know the full picture, but it was a story about a villain as the main character who was likable, who was well developed, who was great. And it also had yet another perfect hate to love romance. Enemies to friends. Well, they weren't really enemies, they just didn't really like each other. And I loved it. And it was so great. Like, I want more necromancer stories where like there are necromancers and they aren't the bad guy, but I also want more stories where the main character is the villain. And it was just great and everything that I loved. And like once again, like the reason why I keep picking 2 books is because yes, they're part of a whole story. I understand that's kind of how series work. But there were just things that I loved about the first book that I really liked, and things about the second book that I really liked, and they were both really strong, and I can't pick one over the other because they were both great. And I am looking forward to the third book in this series. So looking forward to it. So number 7 is going to be another 2 books. Wow. And once again, you really see, like, there's a whole theme here. Like, I am realizing more and more. There is a really big theme about why these all were my favorites for the same exact fucking reason. So the next 2 books are Red Sister, book 1, and Grey Sister, book 2. This is a part of a trilogy by Mark Lawrence, the third book, again, which has yet to come out. Once again, I put both books, not only because they were a part of the same series, therefore they're a part of the same story, so I'm basically saying that I really just love this story, but also because, once again, I love things about the first book, I love things about the second book. They were both really strong contenders, and I couldn't pick which one I loved more than the other, because it's just one big story. And once again, this was a book that I loved because guess what? It delivered on something that I love but don't see often in the way that I would like to see it. So earlier in this year, I may have mentioned, if like I kind of threw it out there into the world, that I wanted a story. I'm gonna fucking kill you. Bitch, get away from my fucking camera. You're gonna knock it over again. Yeah, that's what I want. Anyway, I'm about to go all red sister on this stupid cat who's trying to mess up my stuff. But I mentioned that after watching all of Game of Thrones to prepare for the next season, is that I wanted a story that had a character sort of like Arya Stark, as she is my favorite Game of Thrones character. And I thought I would find that in Nevernight. I didn't. I didn't really have a lot of love for that book. Didn't hate it, but whatever. That's not what this video is about. But Red Sister was what I wanted. It had a school in which assassins trained. It had a young kind of underdog female character who ends up being a shiny star assassin. And it was just really good. I liked the world. I liked the building of this world. I thought this was a fantastic series. It also has female-female romance in there, which I'm always great with. That wasn't a major part of this book, but I'm going to mention it because I love when authors add that, because I want to see more of it just casually mentioned in stories, as it should be. It was just really good. I really liked it. I liked the school atmosphere. I'm always a sucker for schools. Like, if they have to go to a school in which they must specialize in training, love. So they're going to the school. I love kind of underdog characters who at the same time are like the best at their job, but also not the best, because we want to keep it sort of realistic, so they still have to train and stuff. But you want to, like, I love that feeling you get when there is a main character who you know is just so awesome and amazing that when they get into a fight, like, you know they're gonna win, but at the same time they're just real enough that you're like, you might lose, it's gonna devastate me, but like, you're so good that like, I know you can do this. Like, a character you can root for. And I love that. I love characters who I can be confident in that they would win and get a victory, but just enough that like, I'm like, ooh, but that fighter you're fighting against could be better. Like, I like being in that suspense when it comes to my characters, especially when it comes to like action, and that did this perfectly. There's just a lot of friendships between this character. I loved how this character thought of friendships. I loved the female friendships, and then like the little speculative it could be a romance in the future sort of stuff. There was just like so much like in my heart that I was just like there for. It was just I was just there for it, okay? I was there for the whole thing, and I cannot wait for the third book, because I'm gonna pick that up. I might like, this is a series that's so good that I might reread the first two books to read the third book, because it was so good and I'm so ready. I'm preparing my soul for everything that is about to happen. Number 6, yet another 2 books, yet another book that delivered something that I didn't even know that I wanted, but I did. And that is Wild Robot and Wild Robot Escapes by Peter Brown, I believe. This is, again, a little duology. So this is the first and second book. And this is about a robot who awakens on an island. She wasn't programmed or anything yet, but she was a new shipment. Her ship wrecked. She washed ashore on this little island, and she accidentally gets activated by some little curious animals. And then she ends up learning to understand animals, because like, she's a robot with sentience and intelligence, so she ends up deciphering it. And it's about her and her little animal family, and then she gets like this little goose son who's so cute. And it's just about her making her own family, her living in the woods, her loving the woods. In the second book, like, she gets taken out of the woods for a little bit and her struggle to get home to her son. And it was sweet and it had beautiful pictures. And I loved that robot. She was the best. I need more heartwarming robot stories about a robot mom taking care of her little goof son and living in their fabulous hut, being nice to her neighbors. I just need more of that in my world. It brought me so much joy to read this series. Like, there are just some books that make you happy to lay your eyes on. They don't have action or like anything intense. When you read it, you feel like you just received a warm hug and you're happy. And that's why it's so high up on this list, because I was happy reading this, which I feel like that's kind of the experience we should get from reading, is being happy. Not everything has to be angst and death. Number 5 is King of the Wild. Now, I did read Bloody Rose, so I could have done a first and second, but I'm not going to. I did like Bloody Rose, but it was slightly different, and I think my favorite is Kings of the Wild. Kings of the Wild takes place in a high fantasy world, and it is about a group of friends who, when they were younger, went on adventures. They created a band, which was a group of adventurers, and they would go and hunt different monsters and stuff to kind of help society live and prosper by taking care of the monsters that were invading. And they would go into like the forest. They just were the quintessential heroes, and they kind of made heroes and bands famous for everyone forever. And so it now takes place in present day, which is like in their world. But 20 years later, and it is about these old men who have long retired. They're now like middle-aged, kind of old, got creaky backs, and one friend goes to the other, who is our main character, and he's like, hey, my daughter is in a bit of trouble with her band. The monsters are rising again, kind of stirring up some stuff, some old foes, things like that are returning, and I want to go help my kid. Like, I want to show her that her dad is there for her. And our main character, Clay Cooper, is like, all right, man, we'll get the band back together. They don't actually sing, and it's kind of a problem for this band, because all bands are supposed to have a bard who sings about their adventures, but this band keeps killing all of their bards until they get an undead one, which is the only bard that could ever survive one of their adventures. But I love the feel of it. I liked the humor. I liked the main character, Clay Cooper. I loved the way he told stories, which was kind of in like this nostalgia old man voice, where he would just like be talking about stuff and like sort of to himself be like, ah yes, I remember back in my day, oh man, things are different nowadays. It perfectly blended the history of this world by having these older gentlemen go on this adventure and talk about their lives before, their lives now, things have happened, and how you kind of see that not all heroes get a perfect happy ending like you expect. And it's sort of like the after the big adventure sort of book where they get another adventure, so it's also really great. And I like their camaraderie and their friendship, and you could really tell how great their friendship was, because they haven't talked in like 20 years or so, like give or take, but like the moment they all get back together, they are friends. They are like ribbing off each other, teasing each other, making fun of each other, and like that is the friendship I strive for. That friendship where it doesn't matter where we are, when we meet each other, how long it's been, you still got that emotion, that friendship. It's just that strong. So I loved this book. Everything about it. It was just fun. It was a great time. I liked everything. It was perfect. It was perfect for me, and I loved it. It was great. Number 4 is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. I put off reading Adam Silvera books for such a long time because I feel like this is how I feel about Adam Silvera. He writes books that are probably going to make me sad. And I read this and I was like, I was right. He does write books that make me sad, but they're so good. So I bought a few other of his books, and I gotta work up the nerve to read them because they're so good, but they make me sad. So this takes place in a world where it's following these two boys, and they end up becoming friends and kind of having a fast whirlwind romance due to their situation, which is that they're both going to die at the end of this book. So you watch these two boys from two different backgrounds, from two different personalities, as they come together to spend their last day on Earth together, and they have sort of a romance, and you get to see their personalities, like how they change and progress. And that, I think my favorite part about this book was like the characters, everything. First of all, Latin characters, main Latin characters. Thank you. I love that. But also, I loved how fast-paced it was, in the sense that it was like, how could all of this happen in a day? But at the same time, it was like kind of made me realize, like, of course they're gonna fall in love in a day, because the thing that makes you fall in love with a person is the memories you make with them, the experiences, going to weird, trippy places, running from people, all of this sort of stuff. I loved that. I loved like how fast it went, and like it felt like it was insta-love, because like you knew it's only been a day, but at the same time it didn't, because you realize they first of all, they have this one major event that's supposed to happen that's completely similar, and then they go on all these little adventures together and learn more about each other, which is what is quintessential for a relationship. So honestly, it wasn't insta love at all. They just got to know each other really, really quick, and personal really, really quick. And I liked how they died, okay? I thought it was perfect. I thought it was perfect how they died. It was just like, wow. And then it made me wonder, like, maybe it's better we don't know the day we're gonna die. Because, like, reading this, I was like, did they die because, like, it was destined for them to die? Or did they die because someone called them and told them that they were gonna die? Like, is that why they died? Is it? Because there were, like, some situations could have been prevented, like, for how they died. It wasn't a thing in this world for you to be called on your death day to tell you it's your death day. And yeah, I just really like this book, and they're my OTP, and I was both happy and sad that they died. Number 3 is another 2 books. Again, first one and 2 in the series. The main starlight of this is going to be The Wondersmith by Jessica Townsend. However, to read Wondersmith, I did read Nevermore, which was the first book. I don't know how long this series is supposed to be, but this is the first and second book in the series. So I'm counting them together, because technically I did reread Nevermore in 2018, although it was a reread, and the standout and the first time read was Wondersmith, which had recently come out this year. So this book, once again, is just like another book that delivers things that I want, that I'm interested in as plot points, and that I love. So this was a girl, Morgan Crow, and she was named a cursed child, and as such, in her district, in her country, she was treated badly and blamed for all the misdeeds of the world. And in their world, kids can be taken on as apprentices by different schools once they're going on to secondary school. So it's now her time for secondary school, and she gets whisked away to another state, to a country that is not known by everyone else, a place called Nevermore, filled with magic and wonder and beauty. The world is amazing. The characters are amazing. This is another one of those books that is Harry Potter-esque, in the sense that the world is just so grand that I could perfectly see like a universal world revolving around this story. It is a world that will capture the hearts of adults. Like, this is a book that is great for kids, great for adults, it has a beautiful world, beautiful characters. It's just wonderful. But the parts of it that I love the most are like Morgan and her character, for one. I liked the background she comes in as, like, being a cursed child and having like that perfect angst of like kind of being told all the world's problems are your fault, but also like, you know, it's not true, but like whenever she gets self-doubt, it's because of that. And I'm just like, oh, character development, like, you hit me in the heart. Also, it's this amazing thing that I also really love. I like stories in which the hero and the villain have a relationship. Just some sort of relationship. Like, their family, their friends, their mentors, their lovers. I like when the hero and the villain have to talk to each other. Like, I just like that. It's something that just hits me. So in the first book, Morgan is trying to get into this school. And she's doing all these trials to get into the school, and she discovers that the main evil of Nevermore, the villain, the horrible evil man, is this man who is trying to get her as his apprentice to be the next Darth Vader of this world. And she's like, no, I don't accept, but at the same time has to in the second book, because, and there is someone staring at me through this window. Fuck, like, go away, man. I'm trying to film a video. We're just gonna pretend I don't see this guy staring at me, and we're gonna continue. But in the second book is about Wondersmith, which is what she is. That is her magical ability, which happens to coincide with the villain's ability. It's thought of as an evil ability because of this villain and a few other people in the past. And she has to be trained by the villain, and the villain is her mentor, and she's filled with angst, and like, of course, the world is beautiful and magical and all of that. And like, now we finally in the second book get like the school atmosphere that I love, and like, it's just like she's the underdog, so it's like no one wants to treat her right because it's like your powers are evil. So then it ties into her past as like being called a cursed child, and then her like desperately trying to believe that she doesn't have to become a villain, while also relying on the villain of the story to teach her anything about her abilities. And it was just so good. It just like, once again, gave me what I want out of stories. I want more stories where the hero and the villain have to depend on each other, where the hero is trying to fight against the villain but at the same time relies on the villain to learn, to prosper, to be great. I love those. If my main character isn't the villain, I want my main character to almost be the villain, like to almost like to be right on that line where they could have been the villain, like if the circumstances were different, they would have been the villain. Book number 2, the second book on this list. We're about to get to number 1, but we're gonna talk about number 2. Number 2 was, again, a book that I didn't know that I wanted or I needed. I struggle with contemporary, and finding the perfect contemporary for me. However, this was the perfect contemporary, and that was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I had heard a lot of great things about it when this book first came out, when it was first like really popular, getting its steam, and then I finally got to read it. And I read it on audiobook, and everything, like, just by icon Evelyn Hugo is everything to me. Also, she is the quintessential Slytherin character, who I always love Slytherin characters as a Slytherin myself, and I like when Slytherin characters are being devious and like kind of taking what they want, and they have their ambition and stuff like that, but they're also soft boys on the inside, and just everything. It's going to be even more apparent that that's what I love with my first choice, which, if you know me, is not going to be a surprise. But I loved it. First off, like, the bi icon, the way that it's told, telling this history of her and her 7 husbands. The fucking end line where she tries to murder us all with her sass. The end line of this is perfect. is perfect. Her going through her, like, it's just, this whole book is great. This book brings together the community. You're going to see, like, every single booktuber that I have watched, no matter what genre they prefer, if they read this book, they probably like this book, okay? Like, I haven't heard anyone who disliked this book, okay? And if you dislike this book, there's something wrong with you. I'm just gonna say it. This book was great. You just hate Slytherins. That's why you didn't like this book. You just hate Slytherins, and that's why you didn't love Evelyn Hugo. Everything about this book was magnificent and great. And I wish Evelyn Hugo was a real person that I could look up to. But she's just a fictional character that I'm still going to look up to. So, yay. Also, she was Latina, which is always a plus. A queer Latina like me, which is always great. So, honorable mention. Okay, honorable mention before we get to my favorite book of 2018 is going to be Fredrik Backman. I read tons of his books in 2018. I love Fredrik Backman. He's one of my favorites. And I just want to mention him. I just read a lot of his books, and I always love his books, and I wanted to say he is great, and to also check out all of his books. That's it. That's all. So that's why he's an honorable mention. So, yeah. But my number one book, the star, the champion, the favorite is In Other Lands by Sarah Rees Bennett. What a surprise. You didn't see that coming, did you? Yeah, you did. This is a book that I read twice in this year. Right after I finished it the first time. I read it in like July. I read it in June, I think. And then I read it in July. No, I read it in June and then read it in August. I read it in the summer and then read it again. I really like this series. This is another book that just follows a Slytherin character. He's snarky, he's sassy, he speaks his mind, he's rude. He's like me. So much like me. It's like me. If I was this character. I just relate so much to this kid. It's like Elliot, it's a portal fantasy. It's another book that takes place in like an academic setting. So it's a portal fantasy where Elliot, it follows a kid from like 13 to like 17. So Elliot gets taken to see if he can apply to the school, finds out yes he can because he sees this magical wall. If you cross this wall, you enter into the other lands. And in this world there are mermaids and harpies and unicorns and all these magical creatures and elves and dwarves and all of it. And he is being accepted into a school in which people train to protect themselves and their nation against others. So it's a majority human school, but there are a few elves and dwarves, and really just one elf and one dwarf who are attending this school for the first year. They still aren't the most progressive school here in the other lands. They try, and Elliot is gonna get them there, okay? And it's a bi main character. Again, another thing that I can relate to. And throughout the course of this book, he has in-depth, intimate relations with both males and females, which, like, again, is not necessary for you to be bi, but it is something that I like to see, where you could see his relationships with other people while also having an end goal. That is something that I like in books that I would like to see more of, because I think it's more realistic for us, like, not that it's unrealistic for you to only love one person and fall in love and get married and have your happily ever after, but I think it's more common nowadays that people love and have been in relationships with more than one person over the course of their life, right? Before they have that end goal of that person who they're going to be forever with. So I like that Elliot has relationships that he's really invested in, and has his heartbreak, but also has his chance to get that OTP and, like, yay, that final finish, whatever. Anyway, I just like Elliot, and he's great, and he's like me, so I love him even more. And then I like the whole premise, and it was just really good, and I loved it. I'm going to end up doing a video all about this book and everything I loved, but I can't in words just describe my love for this book right now. I guess the most that I can say is, if I love a book, I'll get a tattoo of it. And this is a book that as soon as I finished ending, I was like, better start saving up my money for that tattoo. Because that's how much I love this book. Like, 2 of my tattoos are already related to one book, because I love that book, and that was We Are the Ants, which was a favorite for the year before last, for 2017. And now I have a few on this list that I foresee myself getting tattoos of. So that is how much I love In Other Lands, is that I am going to permanently engrave it upon my body, the love I have for this book. And also recommend it to everybody because it is amazing. And if you don't like this book, you don't like me. We can't be friends if you don't like this book. I'm sorry. It's just the sort of sweet. You can be indifferent towards this book, but if you absolutely despise it, we are not friends. That's all I gotta say about that. That's all I gotta say about that. So these were my favorite books in 2018. These were my top 10. As you can see, all of the books in this list were all books that surprised me. None of these books were books that I necessarily was expecting to go into loving, except maybe The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, because of how much everyone was just like, it's a wonderful book. But everything else, I wasn't, and The Wondersmith, because I had read Nevermore. But everything else was kind of a surprise to me. I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. And I wonder why people do not talk more about these books. Except The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which gets a lot of love. But all of the other books, and Red Sister also gets a lot of love. But it should get more. I'm waiting for the SFF books to come out, and I'm hoping that Red Sister is on there. It should be. Or the second book. I think the second book came out in 2018. I'm not quite sure about the first book. One of them should be on. I'm rambling. Anyway, they were all books that surprised me by delivering something that I've always wanted or didn't even know that I needed. And I think that's all what we should expect from books, is I want those books that deliver the stories that in my heart of hearts were always my desires. Like, I want them to fulfill my greatest book desires. And all 10 of these, technically more than 10 because I doubled up on a couple, delivered upon my trope of tropes, my heart of hearts, the things that I wanted most out of books. And I loved it. And I appreciated it. And I hope 2019 could be filled with at least half as many great books that touch my soul and change my life forever. Like, just a couple, maybe 1 or 2. Don't be awful this year. That's all I gotta say about that. What was your favorite book of the year? Like, what was the book that delivered what you wanted, that gave you something you didn't even know you were looking for in a story, or something that you have always been looking for but had never found until that book? So tell me down below. But if you like seeing what you're seeing here, click all those bunnies, and goodbye, internet.